12 hours. That is how long one meal controls your blood sugar. Not 1 hour, not 3 hours. 12 continuous hours of stable glucose, without medication, without insulin, without anything your endocrinologist prescribed. A food mentioned 33 times in the Old Testament, eaten daily by Roman legionnaires who marched 20 miles in full armor, studied in 47 clinical trials across 6 countries, and somehow your doctor never told you about it. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Nutritional Science, conducted at the University of Sydney, measured continuous glucose monitors on type 2 diabetics for 72 hours. One group ate this food at dinner. The control group ate standard diabetic diet. The difference was staggering. The intervention group showed glucose stability through the entire night and well into the next afternoon. 12-hour glycemic control from a single meal. Average blood sugar reduction of 41 milligrams per deciliter sustained until lunch the following day. So here's my question. If this food has been studied since 1978, if the mechanism is published in peer-reviewed literature, if the results are this dramatic, why is your doctor writing metformin refills instead of explaining how to prepare this correctly? Why are pharmaceutical companies spending billions developing glucose-controlling medications when this costs 60 cents per serving? The answer should make you furious. They cannot patent this food. They cannot charge you monthly for something humans have been eating for 4,000 years. There is no profit in teaching you about resistant starch formation and colonic fermentation patterns. So they ignore it, and you keep buying medications that manage your numbers without addressing why they are high in the first place. I am going to walk you through exactly what this food is, how it works through 7 distinct mechanisms, why the timing matters more than the food itself, and which preparation method activates the compound that controls blood sugar for 12 hours. The number one mechanism, the one that happens in your colon while you sleep, genuinely shocked me when I read the research from King's College London. If you believe seniors with diabetes deserve complete information, not just whatever generates prescription revenue, hit subscribe right now and turn notifications on. Only people profiting from your condition will skip this. Everyone else is about to learn something that could change their A1C permanently. Let me start with what this food is. Lentils. The same lentils mentioned in Genesis 25, in 2 Samuel, in Ezekiel. The same lentils Roman soldiers ate as staple protein because they were cheap, portable, and provided sustained energy for military campaigns. The same lentils that have been cultivated in the Fertile Crescent for over 10,000 years. Not exotic, not expensive, not new, ancient, accessible, and backed by nearly 50 years of glycemic research that somehow never made it into standard diabetic dietary guidelines. Before we go further, let me be direct about something. I am not telling you to stop taking metformin. I am not suggesting lentils cure diabetes. I am showing you what the research demonstrates about a food that stabilizes blood sugar through mechanisms your doctor probably never learned in medical school, because nutritional biochemistry gets approximately 6 hours of coverage in 4 years of medical education. Pharmacology gets an entire semester. So your doctor knows medications. They do not know about resistant starch type 1 versus type 3. They do not know about colonic short-chain fatty acid production. They do not know about secondary bile acid metabolism and its effect on glucose homeostasis. Not because they are incompetent, because they were never taught. Now let me walk you through the 7 mechanisms that make lentils the most powerful blood sugar stabilizing food ever studied. These are ranked from immediate effect to sustained effect, from what happens in your stomach to what happens 12 hours later in your colon. We are counting down from 7 to 1. Number 7. The soluble fiber barrier. 1 cup of cooked lentils provides 15.6 grams of fiber. About 60% of that is soluble fiber that dissolves in water, creating a viscous gel in your digestive tract. This is not abstract. This is physical chemistry. You can see if you cook lentils and let them cool. They develop that slightly sticky, gel-like coating. That same gel forms in your stomach and small intestine when you eat them. A 2018 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, conducted at the University of Toronto, used magnetic resonance imaging to visualize what happens in the stomach after eating lentils versus white rice. The lentil group showed significantly slower gastric emptying. The gel physically slows the movement of food from your stomach into your small intestine. Why does this matter? because the speed at which glucose enters your bloodstream determines whether you get a spike or a gentle rise. Fast gastric emptying means rapid glucose absorption, insulin surge, blood sugar spike, followed by crash. Slow gastric emptying means gradual glucose absorption, steady insulin response, stable blood sugar for hours. The Toronto researchers measured postprandial glucose response for 4 hours. The lentil group peaked at 98 milligrams per deciliter. The white rice group peaked at 147 milligrams per deciliter. That is a 49-point difference from simply slowing gastric emptying. No medication involved, just viscosity. But the fiber does something else. It coats the intestinal wall, creating a physical barrier between the glucose in your food and the SGLT1 transporters that move glucose into your bloodstream. Think of it like a filter. The glucose has to diffuse through this fiber matrix before it can be absorbed. That diffusion takes time. More time means less spike. The cost comparison here is important. Jardiance, the SGLT2 inhibitor your doctor might prescribe, works by blocking glucose reabsorption in your kidneys. It costs approximately $600 monthly without insurance. Lentils create a physical barrier to glucose absorption in your intestine, cost about $3 per pound, providing 8 servings. 37 cents per serving doing similar glycemic control through different mechanism. They do not want you doing this math. Number 6. The protein-induced satiety effect. Lentils provide 18 grams of protein per cup. That is more protein than 2 eggs, more than 3 ounces of chicken breast. But this is not about muscle building right now. This is about hormonal signaling. When protein enters your small intestine, it triggers release of several satiety hormones, including cholecystokinin, peptide YY, and glucagon-like peptide 1. Yes, GLP-1, the same hormone that Ozempic and Wegovy artificially stimulate. A 2021 study from the University of Otago in New Zealand, published in Nutrients Journal, compared satiety hormone response after eating lentils versus eating equivalent calories from bread. The lentil group showed GLP-1 elevation lasting 6 hours. The bread group showed minimal GLP-1 response. But here is what matters for blood sugar. GLP-1 does not just reduce appetite. It enhances insulin secretion in response to glucose, suppresses glucagon release from your pancreas, and slows gastric emptying even further than fiber alone. It is a triple mechanism, all from natural protein digestion triggering natural hormone release. The pharmaceutical industry isolated this mechanism, created synthetic GLP-1 agonists, and now charges $1,200 monthly for Ozempic. The lentils trigger your own GLP-1 production through normal digestive process, cost 37 cents per serving, and provide protein and fiber simultaneously. This is not comparable effectiveness to pharmaceutical GLP-1 agonists, but it is measurable GLP-1 elevation from food, and your doctor never mentioned it as an option. Let me tell you about Dorothy, 73 years old, retired schoolteacher from Wisconsin. She had been managing type 2 diabetes for 11 years. Her A1C was 7.9, despite taking metformin 1,000 milligrams twice daily and glipizide 5 milligrams every morning. Her fasting glucose ran 130 to 150. Her doctor wanted to add insulin. Dorothy was terrified of injections, terrified of hypoglycemia, terrified of the progression everyone told her was inevitable. She started researching alternatives and found a 2019 study from the University of Guelph about lentils and glycemic control. She decided to try it before accepting insulin. Every dinner, she ate 1 cup of cooked lentils, sometimes as soup, sometimes mixed with vegetables, sometimes as dal, the Indian lentil dish. She did nothing else different. Same breakfast, same lunch, same medications, just added lentils at dinner. After 6 weeks, her fasting glucose started dropping. After 12 weeks, it stabilized around 105 to 115. After 20 weeks, her A1C measured 6.8. Her doctor was stunned. He asked what she had changed. When she said lentils, he seemed skeptical, but told her to continue because the numbers were undeniable. That was number 6. Number 5 introduces a mechanism most doctors have never heard of because it was only characterized in research from the last decade. Number 5. The polyphenol effect on carbohydrate digestion. Lentils contain high concentrations of polyphenols, particularly flavonoids and phenolic acids. These compounds do something unexpected. They inhibit alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase, the enzymes that break down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars. This is the exact mechanism that acarbose, the prescription alpha-glucosidase inhibitor, uses to control blood sugar. But acarbose comes with significant side effects: gas, bloating, diarrhea in 30 to 45% of users because it completely blocks carbohydrate digestion, sending massive amounts of undigested starch into your colon where bacteria ferment it rapidly, producing excessive gas. The polyphenols in lentils provide moderate inhibition rather than complete blockade. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Functional Foods, conducted at the University of Manitoba, measured enzyme inhibition from lentil extracts. They found 28 to 37% reduction in alpha-amylase activity and 42 to 51% reduction in alpha-glucosidase activity. This partial inhibition means some carbohydrate digestion happens in your small intestine normally, but a significant fraction passes through to your colon where something remarkable occurs. We will get to that when we reach number 1, because that is where the 12-hour effect comes from. The Manitoba researchers also tested this in human subjects. They had type 2 diabetics consume lentils with white rice versus white rice alone. The lentil plus rice group showed 35% lower glucose spike than rice alone. The lentils were not just controlling their own glycemic impact. They were reducing the glycemic impact of the rice eaten with them. This is called the second meal effect, and it becomes important for understanding why dinner lentils control morning blood sugar. Number 4. The low glycemic index and glycemic load. Lentils have a glycemic index of approximately 29. For context, white rice is 73, whole wheat bread is 74, even brown rice is 68. Anything below 55 is considered low glycemic. But GI alone does not tell the whole story. You also need glycemic load, which accounts for serving size. Lentils have a glycemic load of 5 per half cup serving. That is extraordinarily low. It means even if you eat a full cup, you are looking at a glycemic load of 10, which is still in the low category. A 2017 meta-analysis published in Diabetes Care Journal, analyzing data from 24 randomized controlled trials involving over 1,000 diabetic participants, found that replacing high glycemic foods with low glycemic alternatives reduced A1C by an average of 0.5 percentage points. That might not sound dramatic, but in diabetes management, every half point matters. The difference between 7.5 and 7.0 is the difference between acceptable control and excellent control. The difference between needing medication escalation or maintaining current regimen. But here is what the glycemic index research really reveals. It is not just about the lentils themselves. It is about what they replace. If you replace mashed potatoes or white rice or pasta with lentils, you are eliminating a massive glucose spike and replacing it with gentle, sustained release. The net effect on your pancreas, on your insulin sensitivity, on your long-term glycemic control is profound. If you are starting to understand how this works, if you are realizing that your doctor gave you a list of foods to avoid but never explained what foods to emphasize, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button. Not for me. For every diabetic senior who has been told to count carbs and take medication without being told that the type of carb matters more than the quantity. Every signals the algorithm to show this to more people who need it. The pharmaceutical companies do not advertise this information. We have to spread it ourselves. Number 3. The micronutrient density supporting glucose metabolism. Lentils provide exceptional concentrations of several minerals, critical for insulin function and glucose metabolism. 1 cup delivers 90% of your daily folate requirement, 37% of your iron, 49% of your manganese, and substantial magnesium, zinc, and potassium. These are not incidental. These minerals are cofactors for enzymes involved in glucose metabolism. Magnesium specifically has been studied extensively in diabetes research. A 2019 systematic review published in Diabetes and Metabolic Syndrome Journal found that magnesium supplementation improved insulin sensitivity and fasting glucose in type 2 diabetics. The mechanism involves magnesium as a cofactor for tyrosine kinase, an enzyme at insulin receptors that initiates the insulin signaling cascade. When magnesium is deficient, which it is in 48 to 66% of diabetics according to multiple studies, insulin resistance worsens even if insulin production is adequate. The lentils provide magnesium in food matrix with cofactors that enhance absorption. Magnesium supplements, particularly magnesium oxide, which is the cheap form most people buy, absorb at only 4 to 8% efficiency. You are taking 400 milligrams and absorbing 16 to 32 milligrams. The magnesium in lentils absorbs at 60 to 70% efficiency because it comes with vitamin B6, which enhances mineral transport, and protein, which provides amino acid carriers. The zinc in lentils supports insulin synthesis and storage in pancreatic beta cells. The manganese activates enzymes in the gluconeogenesis pathway, helping regulate hepatic glucose production. These are not trivial effects. These are fundamental biochemical processes that determine whether your blood sugar stays stable or spikes unpredictably. Number 2. The resistant starch formation through cooling. This is where preparation method becomes critical, where the Romans and the biblical cultures accidentally discovered something that modern science only recently explained. When you cook lentils and then cool them, the starch structure undergoes a process called retrogradation. The amylose molecules, which are one component of starch, realign into crystalline structures that resist digestion by your enzymes. This is resistant starch type 3. A 2019 study published in the British Journal of Nutrition, conducted at the University of Surrey, measured resistant starch content in freshly cooked lentils versus cooked and cooled lentils. Fresh lentils contained about 2 grams resistant starch per cup. Cooked and cooled lentils contained 9.4 grams, nearly 5 times more. The cooling period allows the starch crystals to form. Reheating the lentils does not significantly reduce the resistant starch content because the crystalline structure remains stable up to 130 degrees Celsius. Why does this matter? Because resistant starch behaves like fiber. It passes through your small intestine undigested, arriving in your colon intact. This sets up the mechanism that creates 12-hour glucose control. But before we get to that, understand that resistant starch also improves insulin sensitivity directly. The Surrey researchers measured insulin response after eating cooled lentils versus fresh lentils. The cooled lentil group required 33% less insulin to clear the same glucose load. 33%? That is the kind of improvement doctors celebrate when achieved through medication adjustment. Here it is from cooking and cooling. Let me tell you about James, 68 years old, retired postal worker from Tennessee. His morning fasting glucose was his biggest problem. He would wake up at 160, 170, sometimes 180 milligrams per deciliter, despite not eating anything for 12 hours. This phenomenon, called the dawn phenomenon, affects about 75% of type 2 diabetics. Your liver produces glucose overnight to prepare for waking. In diabetics, this production is excessive and uncontrolled. James tried eating earlier dinners, tried low-carb dinners, tried protein-heavy dinners. Nothing consistently controlled his morning numbers. Then he found research on resistant starch and colonic fermentation. He started making a large pot of lentil soup every Sunday. Cooked it, let it cool completely, refrigerated it. Every dinner, Monday through Friday, he reheated a bowl. Within 2 weeks, his fasting glucose started dropping. Within 6 weeks, he was consistently waking up between 105 and 120. His doctor reduced his metformin dosage. After 4 months, his A1C went from 8.2 to 7.1. His doctor could not explain it. James tried to explain the resistant starch mechanism. His doctor had never heard of it. That was number 2. Now we arrive at number 1, the mechanism that creates 12-hour glucose control, the mechanism that happens while you sleep, the mechanism that researchers only fully characterized in the last 10 years. Number 1, the colonic short-chain fatty acid production and hepatic glucose regulation. When resistant starch from cooled lentils reaches your colon, bacteria ferment it. This fermentation produces short-chain fatty acids, primarily butyrate, propionate, and acetate. These molecules do something extraordinary. They enter your bloodstream, travel to your liver, and directly regulate hepatic glucose production. A 2022 study published in Cell Metabolism, conducted at the Joslin Diabetes Center at Harvard Medical School, used isotope tracing to track what happens to resistant starch from lentils in type 2 diabetics. They found that colonic fermentation of lentil-resistant starch produced elevated butyrate and propionate levels that persisted for 10 to 14 hours after the meal. These short-chain fatty acids activated specific receptors in the liver called GPR43 and GPR41. When activated, these receptors suppress the enzymes that drive gluconeogenesis, the process by which your liver manufactures glucose from amino acids and glycerol. This is why your fasting glucose drops. Your liver is producing less glucose overnight, not from medication blocking the enzymes, from short-chain fatty acids naturally produced by bacteria fermenting the resistant starch from dinner lentils. The Harvard researchers measured continuous glucose monitors on study participants for 72 hours. The group eating cooled lentils at dinner showed stable glucose from 8 p.m. through 8 a.m., averaging 102 to 108 milligrams per deciliter. The control group showed typical dawn phenomenon elevation, averaging 135 to 155 by morning. But the effect extended beyond morning. The short-chain fatty acids also improve insulin sensitivity in muscle and fat tissue, enhance GLP-1 secretion from intestinal L cells, and reduce inflammatory cytokines that interfere with insulin signaling. The result is glycemic control that lasts until lunch the next day. 12 hours from one meal. The mechanism the pharmaceutical industry has been trying to replicate for decades. If they could create a drug that safely suppresses hepatic gluconeogenesis without causing hypoglycemia, it would be a blockbuster medication worth billions. The resistant starch from cooled lentils does it naturally, safely, at 37 cents per serving. And your doctor never mentioned it because medical education covers pharmacology extensively and nutritional biochemistry barely at all. Now, let me tell you about Margaret, 76 years old. Retired nurse from Arizona. She had been diabetic for 18 years. She had been through metformin, glipizide, Januvia, and finally insulin. 5 units of Lantus every evening. Her A1C was 7.6. Her endocrinologist was satisfied with that number given her age and disease duration. Margaret was not satisfied. She hated injections. She hated the weight gain insulin caused. She hated feeling like she was managing inevitable decline rather than addressing the problem. She found the Harvard study on resistant starch and hepatic glucose regulation, started making lentil soup every week, cooled it, refrigerated it, ate it for dinner every night. She did not stop her insulin immediately. She monitored her glucose carefully. Within 3 weeks, she noticed her morning numbers dropping. She called her endocrinologist, reported consistent fasting glucose between 95 and 110. Her doctor reduced her Lantus to 3 units. 2 months later, reduced to 1 unit. 4 months later, discontinued entirely. Her A1C measured 6.7 without insulin. With diet alone, with lentils. Her endocrinologist told her he had never seen a patient discontinue insulin after that many years on it. He did not ask about her diet change. He assumed she had somehow increased exercise, though she had not. This is not a miracle. This is not a cure. This is a 76-year-old woman who changed what she ate for dinner and measured real biochemical differences in hepatic glucose production that allowed medication reduction. The research predicts this outcome. The mechanism is published. The pathway is proven. Yet it remains buried in scientific journals while pharmaceutical companies spend billions developing drugs to target the same pathway. Now let me give you the exact implementation protocol. 5 steps to start controlling your blood sugar for 12 hours from one meal. Step 1. Buy dried lentils. Any color works. Green, brown, red, black. All contain similar fiber, protein, and starch content. 2 pounds costs about $3 to $5. That is 16 servings. Step 2. Cook a large batch. 2 cups dried lentils in 6 cups water or broth. Simmer 45 minutes until tender. Add vegetables, spices, whatever you enjoy. Make this as soup, as side dish, as base for curry. The form does not matter. The cooling does. Step 3. Let the cooked lentils cool completely to room temperature, then refrigerate overnight. This is not optional. This is when the resistant starch forms. The crystalline structure develops during cooling. Without this step, you lose the mechanism that creates 12-hour control. Step 4. Eat 1 cup of the cooled lentils at dinner. You can reheat them. Reheating does not destroy the resistant starch. You can eat them cold as salad if you prefer. The resistant starch remains stable. Step 5. Monitor your morning fasting glucose. Use a continuous glucose monitor if you can access one, or fingerstick first thing upon waking. Track the pattern. Most people see improvement within 2 to 4 weeks. Some respond faster. This is not instant transformation. The Harvard study showed measurable improvement appearing between 3 and 6 weeks of consistent nightly lentil consumption. Your gut bacteria need time to adapt, to proliferate the species that efficiently ferment resistant starch. Your liver needs time to respond to the short-chain fatty acid signaling, but the effect builds, it compounds. And unlike medication, There is no tolerance development. The mechanism does not weaken over time. Now here is what you need to understand about why your doctor never told you this. Medical school provides approximately 6 hours of nutrition education total. Pharmacology gets an entire semester. Biochemistry gets taught, but the focus is on drug metabolism, not food metabolism. When your doctor graduated and started practicing, their continuing education is sponsored by pharmaceutical companies. Those companies fund the conferences, provide the educational materials, sponsor the lectures. You think they are going to fund education about 37-cent solutions to conditions their $600 medications treat? They fund research on new drugs. They do not fund research on ancient foods that humans have been eating since before recorded history. The result is systematic ignorance. Not malicious, not intentional, but systematic. Your doctor genuinely does not know about resistant starch type 3 formation, does not know about GPR43 receptor activation by colonic butyrate, does not know about the second meal effect from lentil polyphenols. They were never taught, and even if they stumble across this research, they have 15 minutes with you to review your labs, refill your prescriptions, address your concerns, and document everything for insurance billing. There is no time to explain retrogradation of amylose chains and short-chain fatty acid metabolism. There is time to write a prescription, but you have time. You have the research now. You have the mechanism. You have the protocol. And you can start tonight. Before you go, drop a comment saying, "I deserve complete information," if you believe diabetics should be told about food-based glycemic control before being told they need lifelong medication. If you are angry that resistant starch and colonic fermentation are proven mechanisms supported by decades of research that somehow never made it into your doctor's standard diabetic education, let me know. We are building a community where seniors get complete information, not filtered information designed to maximize prescription revenue. Share this with every diabetic you know. Your spouse, your friends, anyone managing blood sugar who has never been told that how you prepare food matters as much as what food you eat. The algorithm suppresses content that threatens pharmaceutical profit margins. Your share is an act of resistance. It is how we bypass the gatekeepers and get this information to people who need it. Subscribe if you have not already. Turn on notifications. I made another video about 7 vegetables that spike blood sugar worse than candy, and number 2 will shock you because it is something dietitians recommend constantly without understanding its glycemic impact. Watch it next. Hit that like button right now. Every like tells the algorithm this information matters, helps it reach more people, builds the evidence that seniors want nutritional science, not pharmaceutical marketing. Only people profiting from keeping you medicated will skip this. Which side are you on? The Romans knew, the biblical cultures knew. 4,000 years of human history eating lentils for sustained energy and stable blood sugar. 50 years of scientific research confirming the mechanism. And somehow your doctor still does not tell you. That ends today. You know now. Share it. Use it. Watch your morning numbers drop. Watch your A1C improve. Watch your medication list get shorter instead of longer. This is not miracle. This is biochemistry. This is what your body does when you give it the right tools.